Welcome to the Aledo Bearcats Coaches Show podcast from Real Country 92.1 Hank FM. Brought to you by H5 Sports Barn in Aledo. Recorded live every Monday night at 7 from the new Jake's Burgers in Aledo. And now, with Aledo Bearcats head coach Robby Jones, the voice of the Bearcats, Kevin Lonnquist.
Have a second down and 9. Timms is the tight end lined up to the right tackle spot. Two receivers to the near side. They're kind of bunched together. Guillory stands to the right, now switches to the left of Haney with a single receiver. It'll be Guillory over the left side, now up the middle. Room to run. 30, 35, 40, 45, midfield, 45, down the sideline he goes, and he keeps his feet going, stays in bounds at the 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown Aledo Bearcats!
And that 78-yard touchdown run by Ray Guillory, welcome back to him, by the way, is one of the bigger plays that the Bearcats featured in their 48-31 victory Class 5A Division I Region I area playoff win over Lubbock Cooper last Friday up in Wichita Falls. Happy Thanksgiving week to you all. I'm Kevin Lonnquist. We're happy to be joined by Aledo head coach Robby Jones following that victory for the Bearcats. We continue to get really good download numbers for these podcasts that'll run every week. Had more than 100 for each week, basically. And so just remember, you can download these podcasts every week on the Hank FM website or wherever you get your podcast. And, of course, our second segment, we're going to be joined by two players, a little bit of the future and then one of the senior members. We're going to have defensive end Carson Dempesy and then free safety Jake Gillespie. And, again, we'll be following the Bearcats when they take on the Red Oak Hawks this coming Friday night. 7:30 is the kickoff, maybe, because we're their third game of a triple header out there. But 7:30 is the scheduled kickoff at Choctaw Stadium on Black Friday over in Arlington. That'll be a 7 o'clock pregame show on Hank FM. And on that, I think it was what we kind of expected, two explosive offensive teams. And really, I think just it was a matter of getting the right stops, and that's what your team did, especially with the early turnover to kind of get yourselves there. And then the way your team responded when they wound up tying it at 14.
Right. The turnover early was big, on their first drive. We get that turnover to put us up. I believe it was 14-0 after that. And they kept fighting. Our kids kept, plugging it, all game long. They were able to get that onside kick on us, to make the game a lot closer than probably what it was, But credit to our kids for fighting the whole game.
It seemed like, though, this is what the mark of really good teams are, is that if they either fall behind by one score or if they're tied or something along those lines, they find a way to mentally just kind of put it together and answer. And I don't know if it's tradition, but it's also a mindset. I don't know how you teach that, but it's one of those things where your kids just understand what they have to get done.
Yeah, it's part of the tradition, and they have a strong tradition as well. They're a really good football team.
Right.
I think people kind of overlook, how good Lubbock Cooper actually was. But going into our game, they had lost 3 games, but they had lost those 3 games by a total of 5 points.
Right.
And they were scoring a lot of points throughout the year. I think our point total was their lowest point total of the year. And, that's credit to our defense, and probably – to help them out quite a bit was the officiating crew that we agreed to use, because that crew was notorious for not calling very many holding penalties. And they knew that, and so they came out, the first get-go, and it was almost like our defenders were having to break tackles to get to a tackle.
Right. So you kind of have to play, make the adjustments to the officials. And, you get used to, as we're talking about officials here, you get used to what the Fort Worth crews have been doing year after year. But then when you get into the playoffs and you're either getting somebody out of Tyler or down in Waco or some other crew, maybe as far away as Houston, it's one thing to even talk to them or kind of call around and find out what their tendencies are, but you still have to go through a game itself just to understand how it is, how they work a game.
Right, yeah, and we used that crew once last year, and we knew they weren't going to call a whole lot, but when they go out and wrap you up, and spin you around, those normally get called, and they weren't calling any of those, and I think Lubbock Cooper took advantage of that a little bit better than what we did, but, it is what it is. We had to adjust to it and make plays, coming off of those things.
You make a great point about Cooper because of the fact that, this was such a different team from a skill player point of view, the fact that they're just, new quarterback, he was sophomore, Ryan Rodriguez, and, of course, Jaden Hibbler, the move-in, the running back from Lubbock, Monterey. Just a different-looking team. And, of course, Kennard was actually in the Aledo program before he moved out to Lubbock, if I remember correctly. The one who had set the school record for touchdowns for them in a season.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they were a lot more explosive offensively this year than what they were the previous year. We knew that going in. We knew it was going to be a little tougher for us, stopping them defensively than it had been the year before. But at the same time, our kids made plays when they needed to.
So the two things about your team that you were on, and this was the team, your team, I would have to think overall, this performance, you had to feel like this was us. Because of you had the frustrations in the by-district playoff win over Shoemaker, and of course there were things that were hit and miss in the win over Denton Ryan. But the way that this team came out and executed, I have to think you come away with it thinking that's more of the team that I expected to see out there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I told them after the game. I said, hey, that looked more like the Aledo Bearcats than what I'd seen the previous couple of weeks. We were executing offensively. It helps to get all your weapons back. We had Ray back. Ray had a big night. And now this week we're able to work Hawk a little bit more at the receiver spot. So, we're going to be a little bit better, I hope, this week than what we were last week offensively. And, in defense, we struggled a little bit with some of the option. Some of that, had to do with how they were executing it and a little bit of some new little wrinkles that they were throwing at us.
The one thing, that you were concerned about with your team was just executing in the red zone. 4 for 4. Last Friday. And, of course, and then you were also 3 for 3 on fourth down, including the big touchdown run by Devon Keys. But just the way that you were all executed in those final 20 yards, that had to be also another indication of this team was locked in and ready to play.
Yeah, and Coach Williams went in, knowing we were going to use our Raider package, which is our big package, with Devon back there at the tailback and bringing in Carson at the tight end, Jake and Cohan at the two fullback spots. So we knew we were going to do that a little bit more than what we had been, to help us with the red zone. And then we also had a few new little wrinkles in the passing game. The touchdown to Finley was a new play that we hadn't been running.
By the way, I'm glad that they actually ruled it a touchdown because on the play prior, this was the touchdown right before the end of the first half. And it was so weird because that field judge in the back of the end zone on the third down play never gave any indication from what we could see. I mean, it was wound up being an incomplete pass, but nobody knew exactly what he called down there on that play.
Yeah, and evidently the ball slipped through his hands and hit the turf when he was going to the ground. Caden normally makes those catches. It was a good route. Haas put the ball right on him, but it was a little low and to the inside. But Caden normally makes those catches, and then we went right back to a similar play. We had different routes, besides that route, but Coach Williams during the timeout said, hey, we're going to run that same route with Finley, but with this concept away from it, and it turns out, it worked out for us. That's a hard route to cover for a defensive back that's thinking, he could be getting a fade, and then all of a sudden the receiver stops and goes to the pylon, and the ball's there.
Again, being more physical, how he stepped up here, too. That's exactly what we've seen from Caden over the last 3 weeks here in terms of just his physicality, that sort of thing. I want to switch over to Ray and his return. Obviously, what we saw from him, 199 yards, 2 touchdowns, that 78-yard, of course, the 10-yarder to close things out. Just his presence, his speed, that explosiveness really changes a lot of things on how you guys want to do things offensively.
It does. Adding him into the mix, kind of makes us a lot more explosive, and that was evident in the game, because, he's not just rolling off those 70-yard runs. He's getting 6, 7, 8 yards, almost every time he touches the football, and that's big. It helps the offense roll, and plus we were able to mix in a few more passes early, throwing the ball around early, open things up for us, and that makes us a more explosive team when we're able to do that.
You bring up a good point because I want to talk to you about the approach of the game because it almost was like you guys went one way and then completely flipped it in the second half. You guys start out attacking them with the pass, and then second half, I think Haas had like 112 yards passing at the half, finished with 120, had 1 7-yard pass to Trace Clarkson on what turned out to be your last scoring drive. But then otherwise, you guys were running it. You guys finished with 360 yards on the ground. But it was almost like, just how you – and, again, it's about game management, too. Yeah. I get that. But it was almost seemed like you guys were just wanting to, okay, we can do this, now we can do this.
Yeah, it was take care of the lead, basically. We had the lead, and, we wanted to make sure that we were grinding out a little bit of the clock. Let's get the clock rolling and take care of business. And we were doing such a good job blocking up front. Our offensive line did a great job of opening holes in the run game, and we were able to run the football successfully. And when you're doing that, as an offensive play caller, you tend to, stick with it, as opposed to putting the ball in the air.
Yeah, I was going to say we're going to keep running this at you, and you have to come up with a way to stop it.
Exactly. If you can't stop it, we're going to keep doing it, basically.
Yeah, and the physicality from your line, because you had to play with a different type of offensive line out there, different center, different right tackle, that sort of thing. But yet, because those kids are so grounded into understanding offensive line concepts, that it didn't seem like it was much of a change or chemistry issue or anything of that nature.
No, there wasn't much of a fall off at all. We just plugged McCarley in at the center, and then Cartwright came in at the right tackle. It was really good for Cartwright to get a full game of tackle, because really we've played with majority, Campbell missed a game, but for the most part, we've played with the majority of the 5 starters the entire year.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm going to knock on wood as I'm saying this here, but with your offense line, you've really not had many issues with that group at all in terms of maybe some dings here and there, but nothing significant really that's impacted that unit.
No, and that's a credit to the hard work that those guys put in. Offensive linemen are typically some of the hardest working people that you have. They're going to grind it out in the weight room on a daily basis. They're not going to miss days. They're going to be there. They're some of the most dependable guys you can have. And that shows, their preparation through the year has helped them stay healthy. There's always going to be freaky little injuries, but, those guys, because of how they've trained their bodies, they're going to be able to go through those, grueling games. And that was a strong physical football team that we just played.
Yes.
And it was a very physical football game.
Yeah, and, the one thing about just switching sides is, Holton Hendricks, that left tackle who's committed to Texas Tech, as good as you're going to face maybe throughout the course of the playoffs.
Yeah, and they played him at center. I don't know if y'all picked up on that.
Yeah, we saw that. Yeah, we saw the switch on that.
And I'm guessing that was so that they could, get him on Devon as much as they possibly could.
Sure.
And he was, he finished blocks. He blocked a little bit past the whistle a lot of times, But, he was good, a big physical football player.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the game within the game that I found really interesting is the fact that in the second half, because of the substitution rule, for those who don't know, if the offensive team makes a substitution, then the officials have to hold up the game to allow the defensive team to make their own substitutions. And on 2 different occasions in this game, it really played to your benefit because on one, they were a little bit confused, on their first, I should say, they were a little bit confused on what personnel they wanted to send out there. And when they finally decided, then you guys were kind of methodically getting your substitutions in, but because the clock was getting away from Cooper on that sequence there, they had to burn a timeout. And so that's kind of the game within the game on that.
Yeah, they made a late substitution. Whenever somebody makes a late substitution, we have our defensive linemen that rotate, whole game long, they're standing there, so we can real easily grab 1 or 2 of those guys, send them out, and tell them kind of take your time, getting out there, and then the guys that they're, substituting in for, they tag them out, and then those guys, don't get in too big of a hurry to get to the sideline because they're going to hold up the offense until our guy gets off the field. And, in both those situations, they had to burn a timeout because they were going to get a delay of game. And then the second time, they just took the delay of game.
Yeah, they had to because they were down to 1 timeout. And that second situation that you're talking about was in the fourth quarter when they were in your territory around your 38, I think it was, or your 40, where the same thing, where they were a little bit late getting their folks out there, and then you methodically did your thing. And because Chip Darden was down to 1 timeout, he knew he couldn't burn it because of whatever. But when they take the delay, then they go backwards even further, and then they wind up turning it over on downs. I mean, so that was a huge that's the game within the game right there, huge sequence.
Right, yeah, we put them in a bad situation, put them in a third and much longer, to where we were able to get a stop.
So let's look forward here to another 12-0 team that you're going to be facing this coming Friday in the regional semifinals. That'll be the Red Oak Hawks. Now, Aledo, this is going to be actually the 12th meeting between these two programs. Aledo leads the series 9-2. The last meeting was in 2019 at AT&T Stadium that Aledo won 34-14. They come in at 12-0. They had a back and forth affair with Amarillo. They won 35-28 when they scored late rather. They won their bi-district matchup over Burleson Centennial 35-32. So this is a pretty prolific offensive team that you're facing there. Just your early summation of what you see from the Hawks.
Basically going to be the fastest wide receiving crew that you're going to see in Texas football. 2 of their guys were on the state champion 4x1 relay last year. Number 7, Rodney Malone, I believe is his name. He was the third leg. He's actually the slower of the guys. He ran he ran a 10.6 100 meters last year,
right?
Which is really, really fast. Then you have the head football coach's son, Braden Robinson, and he was 6th place in the 100-meter dash at the state track meet last year, and he was the anchor leg of their state champion 4x1 team. He's a sophomore, but you wouldn't tell it. You can't tell it out on the football field. He's fast. He makes a lot of plays. And then Taz Williams, number 1.
Yeah.
He's a very highly recruited junior receiver. He's probably one of the highest ranked junior receivers that's out there in the state of Texas.
Right.
He wasn't on those relay teams, but he is just as fast as those other guys. So, very talented receivers. Their quarterback has missed the last 2 games with an ankle injury. We're not sure the extent of his injury.
Right.
I know he was on the sideline last week with a boot on, walking around with a walking boot. He could be back. He's very elusive. He's a big-time scrambler and a threat to run the ball and throw the ball. They moved their guy that's normally their running back to the quarterback spot.
Yeah.
And he can get the ball out to those receivers. He throws deep balls, does a really good job, for a backup quarterback of getting the ball to their weapons. And then he is a big-time threat because he's a running back.
Right.
He's a big-time run threat when he's in the backfield. It's almost like they're going Wildcat the whole time.
Yeah. Now, you're speaking of Reggie Moody, their talented quarterback, missing the last. He's thrown for over 2,500 yards, 28 touchdown passes, and his backup, of course, is Chris Martinez, who has thrown for 530 yards and 7 touchdowns in these 2 starts. And so if they do get Moody back this week, do you kind of have to game plan for both of them, or what's kind of the approach with that, that uncertainty?
There's not a whole lot of difference other than, maybe a little bit better running back at the running back spot because, Moody, he can run the football as well, and he does a really good job. He gets a little pressure. He gets out of the pocket. He scrambles around, and he finds open receivers. That's what happened, in overtime against Lake Belton. They went overtime with Lake Belton. They had a 4th and long late in that game and hit a fade route to Williams down the sideline to tie the game up. Then, they go into overtime. Lake Belton kicked a field goal. They had Red Oak had a 4th and long, and he was able to scramble around, buy some time, and then find an open receiver in the end zone.
Is that the kind of situation where you have to say, do we need to put a spy on him, or how do you look at something like that?
Well, basically you just need to contain him in the pass rush. Our defensive line has to utilize their passing lanes, not get out of their passing lanes, collapse the pocket on him, not let him escape.
Right, and if he's extending plays with his legs, then that's not what you want to see.
No, but then we got Devon sitting there in the middle.
Right. And so that's kind of nice when you have a guy like that. Just real quickly on Taz Williams, you mentioned that he has over 1,100 receiving yards, 13 scores, and you talk about national recruit. He's got offers from Alabama, Georgia, USC, Texas, Oklahoma. Those, and you've seen special players over the years. When you see that kind of talent there, what stands out about them amongst maybe other skill players? What's the difference?
Just his ability to make plays after he catches the football is one of the big things with him. He's a good route runner. You got to respect the speed, so he gets open on a lot of, comeback routes and things like that. And then once he does catch the football, then he's hard to tackle, so he just makes plays, all over the field. They'll even bring him in motion, hand him the jet sweep just to get the ball in his hands. He's a dynamic receiver, but he's not the only one.
Right.
They have 3 of those dudes,
right,
that can, take it all the way to the house anytime they touch the ball.
Defensively, obviously this is a group that's done well forcing turnovers. They forced 30 this year, 14 interceptions and 16 fumble recoveries. Their leading tackler is Mekhi Williams. He has about 89 stops this year. Zach Smith, their linebacker, a commit to SMU. Those 2 guys, though, and others have really played. They're kind of a defense that will play some high risk, high reward, but when they make big plays, it really shows up.
Yeah, good, solid defense. That's the thing. If you've ever seen any of Coach Robinson's after the game talks, he preaches a defense wins championship. So he's tried to build a defense, there at Red Oak that's going to take him to a championship, and he's got a pretty good one.
Yep, for sure. And this is a program, for years. For those who never tracked Red Oak, but in the in the 90s and the early aughts and even in the early teens, this program was nothing. It was always one of the worst. It was pretty much like your automatic win, and it's changed because of growth in the area down in South Dallas County, where they've taken advantage of that too.
Yeah, and he's been able to keep the talent there. They've had talented kids from Red Oak that have left Red Oak to go to play at other programs. And Coach Robinson, and that's another thing that I've learned, from listening to him talk on some of his interviews is he's keeping the homegrown talent there in Red Oak. He's not letting them get away from them, and you're seeing the payoff.
Should be a lot of fun. It's one of those things where, could you foresee it being somewhat like Lubbock Cooper, where it's just getting the right stops at the right time, because this could be an up and down affair? Yeah,
it could be like that. It depends on how well our defense plays. I feel pretty good about how our defense can match up against their offense. So I feel like we're going to get some stops, and then we got to continue doing like what we did last week offensively. We got to mix up the run and the pass. We got to be able to move the football consistently.
All right, and finally, District 3 5A still has two teams in it, yourselves and of course Justin Northwest. Very impressive showing last week. Their 41-0 blowout of Amarillo Tascosa. They get Abilene this week, and I was a little bit surprised to see Denton Ryan get knocked out by Abilene High on that game.
Yeah, well, Abilene's a good football team. They beat Lubbock Cooper last-second touchdown against them for the district championship in that district. So we knew they were a solid football team. And then Denton Ryan going into it, they lost their quarterback in the second quarter. And that was a big hit for them, because when they made that change to go to Braden Mussett against us, it totally changed their football team.
Yeah.
And then when they lost him in the second quarter, and of course I haven't seen the game, I don't know exactly how it unfolded.
Yeah, same here.
I'm sure, when they lost him, it hurt them offensively, and that probably played a big part in it.
It hurt them emotionally too, I would think too. When you're in the playoffs and you lose a guy like that where you've developed a rhythm and you seem to have things going, and then to see him go out, it's kind of like a gut punch.
Yeah, it is. And not only was he, a difference maker for him at quarterback, but when they were playing with the other quarterback, he was their best receiver.
Right.
So they didn't have the best receiver when that quarterback, had been playing all year. So, it was a big loss for him.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Coach, we'll look forward to this coming Friday night over at Choctaw Stadium between you and Red Oak. A pregame show is at 7 o'clock, roughly, and then the kickoff is at 7:30. Happy Thanksgiving and good luck to you on Friday night.
All right, thank you.
And just a reminder that the Aledo Coaches Show podcast is brought to you by H5 Sports Barn. H5 Sports Barn and Nye Physio and Performance can help unlock your athletic potential and elevate your game like the Aledo Bearcats, with expert sports physical therapy, tailored recovery plans, and top-notch sports performance training. H5 Sports Barn, proud supporters of the Aledo Bearcats. When we return for the second segment, we will be joined by defensive end Carson Dempesy and free safety Jake Gillespie. Stick around. The podcast coming right back up at you.
They are 2 for 2 on fourth downs. The ball just resting outside the Cooper 28-yard line. Opening minute, 15 seconds here. Wildcat formation to Devon Keys. Haas Haney stands to the far right. Double tight ends. Have to get a yard. And Devon Keys will get it to the 25, 20. Breaks a man to the 10, 5. Touchdown, Aledo Bearcats!
And that opening touchdown of the fourth quarter was pivotal for the Bearcats as they were able to create some separation against Lubbock Cooper. We welcome you back to the Aledo Coaches Show podcast here on 92.1 Hank FM. Kevin Lonnquist. We're going to be joined here in just a few moments by Carson Dempesy and Jake Gillespie. Let's give you the Aledo alumni report. We'll start off with, or we'll give you quarterback Braden Fowler-Nicolosi of Colorado State, having a really good year this year, throwing for 3,143 yards and 20 touchdowns in their 30-20 victory over Nevada on Saturday. Fowler-Nicolosi threw for 245 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Rams are 5-6 and trying to get bowl eligible. They will be at Hawaii on Saturday. So good luck to BFN in that quest out there late Saturday night out on the island. So at least he gets a trip out there to the islands to come watch it. I'd do that, wouldn't you? All right, so we are happy to be joined by a little bit of the long in the tooth. That's going to be free safety and SFA commit Jake Gillespie. And then to my far left is going to be sophomore defensive end Carson Dempesy. Guys, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start off with you, Jake. I mean, you guys were in this back and forth last week with Lubbock Cooper, 48-31. And they hit you a couple times with Jaden Hibbler, with some runs, but you guys were able to sustain and kind of match them every time they came at and made a run at you. What was it like on the sideline just going through a game like that when it was like up 14, then it's tied, but then you guys are back up 14, and they're trying to make a run? What was it like going through something like that?
I think it was really just about making adjustments, and I think we made some good adjustments. They threw some stuff that we hadn't seen, gave us some different stunts up front, And I think we made good adjustments on the sideline stop it.
Yeah, they switched their offensive line. They put Holton Hendricks, their talented offensive lineman, over to center because they wanted to kind of maybe chip at Devon Keys. So when you guys see something like that, how does the back four of that secondary react to something like that, even though you likely are not going to be impacted by something like that?
Really just we have to fit the run a little bit faster. We know we have to trigger on the dive a little faster and help them out with that when you got a talented O-lineman there.
Okay, and then for Carson, for you, I mean, now you're on the edge, and so Hendricks moving impacts you a little bit because maybe you're not the guy that you're going to be going up against, but you're going to be seeing somebody else. But what was that like just going against that front? Because that was probably one of the better offensive lines you guys have seen this year.
Yeah, they were very physical, pretty talented. I would say the pass blocking was they were pretty good, and I'd say we handled them pretty well.
Yeah, for you guys, though, to get on, I think it was about, in a game like this where there's so much offensive talent that it's about maybe getting the right stops or just enough stops. And I go back to a couple things. You guys get the turnover early, which sets up your second score. And then I think maybe the most pivotal stop of the game was you all are up 28-17 at the half. They get the ball to start the second half, and you guys get them off the field. They get one first down, but then you get them off the field. Carson, just speak to how big that was for you guys to get that.
It was really big. We got a lot of momentum from then, and then the offense took over, and it really helped us out.
And then how did you see that, Jake?
I think it was just good after we gave up that big play on that drive right before the half that we forgot about it and made the stop.
That's a pretty incredible catch that kid Deaver made. I mean, I was about to call that incomplete, and he just reaches out and grabs that thing. Where were you on the field when he did that in front of Chris?
I was triggering on the option. They ran the speed option, so I triggered on my key, and then they did the option pass. And
that's a heck of a catch. That's great. Okay, so you guys wind up, after that stop, you guys immediately score on Guillory's 78-yard run, but then they come back with two quick touchdowns on you to close it within 35-31. So what's the mindset there? Because obviously they've made it less than a one-score game, less than a touchdown game, rather. And so what's the thinking there in terms of what you all have to do? Obviously offense makes a big play, but what's the kind of thinking there? Because this is money time in the fourth quarter. We'll start with you on that, Jake.
Really just got to make a stop and help out our offense because they started firing, and we needed to back them up and make a stop so we can win.
And then for you, Carson, I want to ask you about, just because you got to get pressure. I mean, whether that's going to be on the pass rush on Ryan Rodriguez or if it's just kind of flooding the gap so that you can kind of limit Hibbler on what his effectiveness is. What's kind of the thinking on that for you all dealing with?
Yeah, we need to on our pass rush. We need to try to give them as minimal time as possible so that the secondary can do their job and they can get the ball out pretty quick.
Okay, so let's just talk. I'm going to ask you a little bit about, because when they run that speed option, Rodriguez is typically, he kept it more than I thought he was going to before he was either going to pitch it or something like that. But as a defensive end, when you're reading something like that, what's kind of your first instinct or your second instinct on how you respond to something like that if it's coming to your side?
Yeah, so I had quarterback on that. I was just going to sit and let him make the ball, or make him make the pitch, because we'd rather him run it than the running back.
Yeah, for sure, and because he's not as fast as the other guys, and so. And then for you, Jake, when you're going against a team that's so they're multiple spread, and they really meant it the way they did it. They could go right up the middle, or they could go, what we saw with sometimes with their passing game there. But when you're playing a team against the option, is it more like watching their hips or watching their eyes? In terms of just, how if they're going to keep it, or if they're going to pitch it, that sort of thing.
It's really just making your keys and doing your job and trusting that the other person is going to do their job too.
Okay, and I want to ask you a little bit about, too, maybe the other pivotal drive, too, or it's pivotal stop, rather, that you all made was in the fourth quarter. They're driving, I think it's 42-31, and they make a substitution late. You guys, they're at your 38, I think it is, and then you guys are late bringing in your substitution because you can by the rules, and then they have to take the delay game, and that really threw off because they went backwards even further on that. Mm-hmm. So what did that mean? So getting them off the field, could you feel the momentum of the game absolutely swing your favor after that series? Talk about that, Carson.
Yeah, we did. It was really big. It gave our offense not only the ball at a pretty good yard line, but it really gave us the momentum in the game, and I think that's really what changed it. put it away.
How did you see that?
I think it just gave us an opportunity to put it away, and I think that once we stopped them, we trusted our offense was going to drive down.
Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit, Carson, because you missed so much time during the regular season, 6 weeks with the appendix surgery there. So I know that's a bummer when you miss that much time, but just getting back into game shape, or just getting back into playing, what was that process like for you after missing so much time?
Yeah, so I came back Burleson Centennial, and I was a little bit out of shape, and I started running and getting back into the weight room slowly. And then by the time we played Denton Ryan, I felt pretty good.
Do you feel like you're all the way back, or do you feel like there's still some time, or are you still kind of feeling your way back? I know what you said just a moment ago about Ryan, but where do you think you are right now physically?
I'd say I'm pretty close to almost back. I might not be as strong as I was before, but I'm almost there. I'm pretty much there.
Gotcha. They're going to need you for that. I mean, just for having him back, what does that mean for when you watch this front? And you guys can roll so many guys out there, but just having him back, what does that mean to you to have that?
Oh, it means a lot having all of our guys back, having him back, and then it gives us a lot more depth and gives everybody else a break.
And then you also picked up Cooper Cyphers. He came back after the hand injury. I mean, that just adds to your depth there. Just talk about with Cooper's return, what that means just in terms of just what you guys may be able to do with that front moving forward.
I think they'll be a lot better because nobody's going to get as tired, and then we're going to get that rotation in and get to the quarterback faster.
And what does that mean for you, though, with Cooper back? How does that impact you?
Yeah, I think it gives us a lot of depth, and I think we'll get a lot more pressure on the quarterback. I think me or Cooper Cohan or whoever is in, I think us 50% and someone else 100%. I think we're going to take the 100% guy.
Okay, so you guys get Red Oak this coming Friday. Very explosive offensive team, just like what you saw with Cooper. They've got three outstanding wide receivers. Taz Williams is the national recruit, that sort of thing. And you guys have faced this kind of thing over the years. But when you play a team like this, and they're 12-0-2, they won their district championship, District 4 or 5A. How do you prepare for something like this, and what's going to be key in getting ready for a team like this?
I think we have to be really disciplined on defense, and we've got to just fit our keys. I think if we fit our keys and trust all of our other teammates, I think we'll come out.
And that's one thing too about can you push the issue with the front? With what you guys, can you get enough sound? Can you guys push the offensive line back and kind of put them under duress? Is that kind of what you all have to think about?
Yeah, I think we need to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. We also need to keep him in the pocket because he can move. So we definitely don't need to let him get outside.
And then Jake, since you're going to be going against, trying to maybe some help on some of those wide receivers, what do you see when you're looking at all those receivers? What did you see on film with those guys?
Really just got to read your keys. I mean, they're athletes, so they chunk the ball up every once in a while and try to let their athletes make plays. But I think we got athletes on the secondary that can match theirs.
Yeah, you got a couple. Yeah, I mean, Chris Johnson was outstanding on Friday night, and Jaden Allen's been a physical hitter. But when you guys have that kind of talent in the secondary, and then of course with Boogie, I don't want to overlook him. But when you get that kind of that experience in the secondary, how fun is that, though, to go against talented wide receivers like that? Because that's kind of like the game within the game a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I know all of them, and me included. We love the competition. We love the challenge.
All right, so for you, Carson, I want to ask you because they may get Reggie Moody back, they may not. They might have Chris Martinez as their quarterback. So as you're studying this game and getting ready for both of these guys or one of these guys, what's kind of the challenge in terms of how do I just get preparation overall for depending on who you see?
Yeah,
and you may see them both.
Yeah, I definitely would be a lot more aggressive with the rush if their normal quarterback is back. But we don't want the
Martinez.
We don't want Martinez to flush out of the pocket because we don't want him to run the ball. So we just need to be really careful on that.
Spoken like a good football player. I know him by number. I'm not really caring about the name, that sort of. And so I want to get back into recruiting for you because you're still solid with SFA. But have you seen anything, Jake, over the last couple of months of schools trying to come in because signing day, the early signing period is getting closer to mid-December? What's been kind of the interest, or have you pretty much told thanks but no thanks?
I mean, I've been hit up by some schools, but I'm pretty locked in with SFA.
Okay, and then for you, Carson, this is all new for you, so just kind of tell everybody about what your recruiting situation is, offers that you may have seen or may have received, or schools that you're talking to that you feel like that may be close to offering you.
I mean, I've gotten a couple interests from schools, but no offers as of right now.
Okay. How do you look at this, too? Because you're in a program where there's going to be a ton of offers, or guys that are being offered, and they're signing with major programs, and so How do you kind of go through, how do you watch them, maybe go by example to kind of deal with that once you start to get hit up a little bit more? What's important for you?
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I think after this season, I'll have a good amount of film, and we'll hit the weights hard in the off season. I think by spring ball we'll be doing pretty good.
Yeah, and that's pretty much for you. I mean, they say in the recruiting cycle, and I'm sure Jake, you can speak to this, is that that summer between your sophomore and junior year is so pivotal because that's when you develop the most, and that's when everyone starts to make their big, unless you're just some ridiculous freshman or sophomore that someone moves in on. But that's going to be, if you're going to get schools to come after you, I would think that made a big difference for you to where you're at now. Can you talk about what that development was like, though, between your sophomore and junior year?
Well, between your sophomore and junior year, you really got to get ready for that junior season because it's going to be the time where most coaches are going to be looking to start recruiting you, and it sets you up for senior year to get those offers or junior year.
Okay, and then for you, so to see now, you've got a tip to work with on that, Carson. And
yeah.
So, okay, so real quickly, guys, just keys to the game for Friday night. What do you think is going to be essential for you guys moving on to the state quarterfinals against either Justin Northwest or Abilene? I'll start with you, Carson. What's going to be big?
I think we're going to be, for me, I'm going to need to be really physical with the tackle so that Devon can get out there and make plays. I also think that we need to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, keep him in the pocket, and just going to be really physical out there. That's what we need to be as a defense.
And then before I get to you, Jack, I want to ask you real quickly, do you have a certain move that you like more than any other move that you've worked on?
I really like the ghost move. I think the ghost move, if you hit them with a bull rush a couple times, there'll be some speed off the edge. Ghost move, that'll hit them really well. Okay,
and then Jake, for you, what do you think is going to be essential for you guys?
I think really just doing our job, trusting the coaching, reading our keys, and I mean, if we just hit them in the mouth every play, then they're not really going to want to play with us.
He is Mr. Fearless, by the way. There's never a punt that you never liked, right? To catch. And so I was actually kind of disappointed for you when you had a signal fair catch a couple times on it.
Yeah, no, I wanted to get one.
I was going to say, by the way, they're still holding the Lamel Swanson punt return touchdown over your head, are they not?
Yeah, they are.
Isn't that nice of them to do that for you?
Yeah, I'll never hear the end of that.
Okay. All right, so to my immediate left is Jake Gillespie. He's the senior. And to my far left is Carson Dempsey. He's the defensive end, and he's the sophomore. Guys, thank you for joining us. Let them know, folks, that you're happy to have them with us tonight. And once again, we want to let you know that this Aledo Coaches Show podcast is brought to you by H5 Sports Barn. H5 Sports Barn and Nye Physio and Performance can help unlock your athletic potential and elevate your game like the Aledo Bearcats. With expert sports physical therapy, tailored recovery plans, and top-notch sports performance training. H5 Sports Barn, proud supporters of the Aledo Bearcats. Don't forget the Bearcats playing at 7:30 this coming Friday night at Choctaw Stadium in Arlington. They'll be taking on the Red Oak Hawks in the Class 5A Division I Region I semifinals. And, of course, we'll have the pregame show on Hank FM at 7 o'clock. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll talk to you all next week. I'm Kevin Lonnquist. Good night from Jake's in Aledo.
Thanks for listening to the Aledo Bearcats Coaches Show podcast, brought to you by H5 Sports Barn in Aledo, with Bearcats head coach Robby Jones and the voice of the Bearcats, Kevin Lonnquist. Please like and subscribe to this podcast and tell a friend. You're also welcome to join us in person every Monday night at 7 from the new Jake's Burgers, 601 FM 1187 in Aledo. And then listen to every Aledo Bearcats game, home and away, live on 92.1 Hank FM, on the free 92.1 Hank FM app, or online at 921hankfm.com. The Aledo Coaches Show podcast is a production of Real Country, Hank FM.